What's up? It's Billy Briz, aka at Getting Bills on Twitter. I am joined by my main man, Brady, aka DFS by the numbers. Brady, how are you feeling and how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You could also call me the first touchdown scorer king, man. I mean, I hit it. I hit it again. Donald Parham came through, and I don't know what it is. It seems like whenever nothing sticks out on a slate, I just go and I try to find these like crazy first round touchdown scorers. Like I had Van Jefferson week one, but Donald Parham first touchdown. I put $6 on it to win 150, and then I also had the Ingold who is on the Raiders, $4 to win 200. But glad one of them came through. But yeah, that was
Van
crazy.
Jefferson, week one, right?
Yeah, that was week one. That was crazy. I could not believe it.
So I guess I should ask you then, who's going to catch the first touchdown for tomorrow's night's game?
Woo.
I feel like there's a lot of good options at plus money.
I don't know. We'll have to see, Billy, but maybe something sticks out and I'll put some money on it.
All right, well, we'll definitely hold you that one. If you want to ask Brady, make sure you follow him over on Twitter at DFS by the numbers. Let's get straight into the quarterback player pool today, though. At the top, I feel like this is a weird week. A lot of studs off of this week's slate. I'm kind of looking at Kyler Murray as my pay up quarterback this week. He was the cover boy of the video. I know there is another counterpart in that game that should be very popular this week, but I do like Kyler Murray. If we're getting an ownership discount, Brady, who are you liking up at the top?
Kyler Murray, I talk about him every single week. I don't think there's going to be a week that goes by where I don't talk about Kyler Murray. So for me, it's Kyler Murray up top, but $1,000 cheaper. Jalen Hurts, another guy that I seem to be talking about every week, and it seems to be paying off, averaging 26.8 DraftKings points going against Carolina. He always has that rushing yard upside, 34 rushing attempts on the year. Very solid stacking option with Devonta Smith, who had 10 targets last week. So for me, if I'm going up to pay for quarterback, and there's actually some guys I like down below, to be honest. But Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts are my top two up top.
Yeah, I feel like this is feels like an old fashioned type of slate where you get to pay down at quarterback this week. There's a lot of good mid range quarterbacks. One I was looking at the low 8K range on FanDuel in 6K, $6,900 on DK. Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys quarterback. They're playing the Giants. One of the better game environment totals of the week. Really do like Dak this week. Is there anybody in the mid range you're looking at? Or are you getting more into the low 6Ks, high 5Ks?
Yeah, probably the lower range for me. But you mentioned Dak, right? It's so frustrating because week one he throws the ball 58 times, and week four he threw the ball 22. Week three he threw the ball 26, and week two he threw the ball 27 times. So in the last 3 weeks he hasn't thrown the ball 30 times, but he's still being very efficient. I just wish he would go back to the old Dak Prescott of last year, where every game he played last year he threw the ball like nearly 50 times. So I guess that's my only concern with Dak, but you can't deny that he's at a phenomenal price point. Somebody that I talked about last week, and it surely did work out, is going to be Sam Darnold. It sounds ugly, but Darnold's actually been phenomenal this year. He's actually averaging more DraftKings points than Jalen Hurts, 26.9 DraftKings points on average going against Philly here. You have a 45.5 point total, and CMC is questionable, which is weird. I expected CMC to be out a little bit longer, but he might come back. But if he does not come back, I think I'm going right back to Darnold. Darnold even showed some rushing yard upside as well, had two rushing touchdowns. I think Darnold's interesting at 6,600.
I could definitely see where you're going with that one. In the mid range, I was actually looking at Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. I know he almost burnt some tickets for some people last Thursday night, but starting cornerback star Jair Alexander for the Packers will be out for this week, more likely than not. So I think this kind of makes Backdoor Joe kind of live here on the sportsbook spread, and that kind of translate into the daily fantasy numbers. I kind of like that price tag at $6,100 in GPPs and $7,000 on FanDuel. What cheap quarterbacks were you looking at this week?
Yeah, so there's two that are kind of sticking out. So if Jimmy Garoppolo does not play, I think Trey Lance is probably the guy I'm going to go to. He's 5,700 going against Arizona. You have a 49.5 point total, which I think is like the third highest on the slate there. So he has rushing yard upside. I really do like the options to stack with as well. We have Kittle, who's very cheap, and then also Deebo Samuel, who we'll talk about, that I like as well. So Trey Lance for me, if Jimmy Garoppolo is out. Another cheap guy that stuck out, and It's going to be pretty ugly, but Jacoby Brissett, he's 5,200 going against Tampa Bay, who their run defense is very good, and I think teams know that, and that's why teams are passing the ball a lot. I expect them to pass the ball a lot. I think they're like 10-point dogs, solid stacking options. You have Waddle, who I'm very, very high on this week, so I think Brissett could be like a really cheap, sneaky option. I mean, he's throwing the ball a ton, 30 passing attempts in week 4, 49 passing attempts in week 3, and 40 in week 2. So the passing attempts are there. The usage is there. And I think it's a really good matchup against this Tampa Bay secondary.
I would definitely agree with you on the Trey Lance side of things. I think that is the cash game optimal quarterback at the first look of things. Let's go over to the running back position. We'll save some quarterbacks for Friday's show. At the running back position at the top this week, between Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, which one are you more inclined to? Do you think Derrick Henry smashes against the Jacksonville Jaguars, or are you more interested in Dalvin Cook and a higher team total?
It's tough, man. I like both of them quite a bit. I guess if I had to pick between one, it would be the Derrick Henry side. I don't know what it is, but it seems like every time Derrick Henry plays the Jacksonville Jaguars, he always has like a 200-yard rushing game, 3 touchdowns. So there's that kind of narrative there, and I think he's in a great spot. And what I like about Henry is the pass-catching upside that he's bringing this year. That's something in his game that he did not have the past few years, and something why I did not like Henry as much in terms of like a DFS play as of late. But now that he's actually catching passes, I think he even has, I talked about it last week, how he had more receptions than Alvin Kamara. Yeah, not sure if he still does, but it's pretty close either way. Like, that's crazy to talk about. So Henry, for me, if I had to pick one, but Dalvin Cook's in a phenomenal spot. Like, both of these guys are in phenomenal spots. If I can go up and get both of them, I will. I guess the only concern I have about Dalvin Cook is he going to be limited at all? Is he going to be full go? I mean, Madison got, I think, 10 carries last week. So that's my only concern, but they're both in smash spots here.
I would definitely agree with you on that one, Brady. Quick question that is kind of a little bit off topic. What are your Urban Meyer thoughts this week? Oh, man, did you see – I know you're a Twitter guy, so I know you've seen the news. What are your thoughts? Should he be fired? Should he have his job? What are your thoughts?
I just can't believe it, man. I mean, the guy has a wife and everything. Oh, I think it's hilarious, but I'm surprised he was not fired, to be honest. But, I just thought it was funny.
I think from a financial standpoint, I don't think they can afford to fire him. But if that was like any other coach in the league, I think he would be fired. But as we digressed a little bit, in the high mid-range, I kind of like Aaron Jones this week. Couple injuries for the Packers wide receiver core. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is out. So I really do like Aaron Jones this week. I think he has a pretty safe floor against the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Mixon. I think the Packers should win that game. He's $7,900 on DK and $8,400 on FanDuel this week. Brady, there's a lot of juicy mid-range options on the board this week. Who are you looking to pay down at this running back slate? Because it's a very sexy running back slate.
Yeah, there's a ton of guys that stick out. I mean, you have Barkley there. I think Barkley's in play against Dallas. Elliott is somebody I do want to talk about. So I talked about earlier how they're not passing the ball a lot in Dallas, and although Dak's being very efficient, it looks like they're trying to give Zeke the ball. He's 7K going against the Giants. I love the matchup here. The Giants' run defense is giving it the 5th most DraftKings points to opposing running backs, and Elliott's had at least 20 touches in the last 2 weeks. So I think Elliott is back. I love the matchup. I love the game script. 7-point favorites going against Giants. I think Elliott's definitely a play. On the flip side, Barkley, I think Barkley's back as well. He's getting the usage he should have been getting all year. Coming off of an injury earlier in the year, it seems to be fine now. 40 touches in the last 2 weeks for Barkley. So I think Barkley and Elliott there, both in that same game, are guys I'm going to be targeting around this low 7K range.
I definitely don't blame you. A guy that I was looking at around the same exact mid-range was DeAndre Swift, Detroit Lions running back. I don't know how much I like Dalvin Cook this week, but between him and Henry, if I don't play Henry, I definitely will be inclined to play some Swift and GPPs just off an ownership discount of Dalvin Cook chalk, cheaper price tag. And DeAndre Swift, I feel like, should be used in the passing game more, especially in this type of game script against Minnesota Vikings. I think the Minnesota Vikings are one of the biggest favorites on the board this week. Kind of bodes well for DeAndre Swift in the passing game. He has a pretty good price tag, $6,100, $6,900. And if Christian McCaffrey is out this week, I wouldn't mind going back to Chuba Hubbard. I know it wasn't the sexiest of spots last week, but his price tag didn't really go up too much. The usage was there. If he falls inside the end zone, we'll have a different type of take on it. But I do like some Chuba Hubbard and GPPs this week. Definitely won't be a cash game cover boy option like he was last week, though. Who else are you looking at in the low range for running back this week?
So we'll touch on it more on Friday probably because there's some things that still need to happen in terms of injury news. But P Ryan is 4,000, very very cheap. If Mixon is out, I don't know if Mixon's going to play or not. But if Mixon is indeed out, P Ryan's probably in a great spot. Fournette is also in a great spot. If Bernard is out, I'll be more inclined to play him. Even if Bernard does play, I still don't mind him, but especially if Bernard is out. So those are two that we'll be looking at later in the week. But we do know that David Montgomery will indeed be out. So I think Damian Williams is an interesting option. He's very cheap, 5,600 going against the Raiders. 5-point underdogs there, has some pass catching upside. So Damian Williams for me in this bottom range as of now, but there's a ton of things that can open up in the next few days.
I definitely will agree with you on that one, Brady. Those would be the low range guys that I was looking at as well for price salary. And I would throw Trey Sermon in that mix as well. He's been looking pretty good. And, San Fran, pretty good spot this week. But before we go over to the wide receiver position, let's get to our sponsors real quick. Shouts to Manscaped. Make sure you get that Lawnmower 4.0 and use promo code Pub Sports Radio when you're on your way checking out. I am Billy Briz, a.k.a. Ackett and Bills, joined by my man, Brady, a.k.a. DFS by the Numbers. Quick shout-outs to the chat. We got Noli Knowles says, Billy, what up, my guy? Shouts to Noli Knowles on Jimmy's channel today. Definitely helped me out with looking at over-unders. I like talking to Noli because Noli's an under guy, and you don't really meet under bettors in the community unless it's MMA. And his unders usually hit at like a 60 to 65% hit rate. So I usually just cross those games off the DFS slate, the ones that he bets the unders on. And Preston says he may or may not have the best team in fantasy football this year in the PSR league. Brady, how are you doing in fantasy football this year?
Not doing great. I think I'm 2-2 in one league and then 1-3 in the other league. I have McCaffrey as well, so I'm doing pretty bad so far, but still a long year, can still turn it around. But yeah, terrible start. Had the first pick of the draft this year, probably like the first year ever. Just not been going good, man. McCaffrey hasn't done much so far, but McCaffrey's coming back soon. I'll be all right.
I don't blame you, dude. I got back-to-back dynasty teams that are 0-4 right now, and I'm just completely tanking the teams. It's UFC Saturdays, right? I'm not looking at lineups. So let's go over to the wide receiver position this week. We have Davante Adams as the highest priced receiver this week at $8,200 on DK and FanDuel. And I'm actually inclined to play him at that price tag. I think that's a pretty cheap price tag. There's a lot of wide receivers that feel a little bit overpriced this week, and I feel like Davante Adams is in a good price range. Brady, who are you looking up to pay up at the wide receiver position this week?
Up top, I'm right there with you. I'm going right back to Adams. Last week, I had a bunch of Hill, which really worked out. He had like 50 DraftKings points, and I had a lot of Adams, which did not work out as well. But I think it's a great bounce back spot here. He disappointed last week, which maybe does lower a little bit of ownership, but I think he's still going to be one of the highest, if not the highest, owned wide receiver on the slate. He's still averaging 11 targets. I think he's averaging about 11.25 per week this year. He just had like 18, 17 targets last week before the last week as well. So, yeah, I think Davante Adams is definitely in play here. 8,200. Don't mind going back up to him. Other than that, like not much sticks out up here. I mean, Jefferson is fine, but DJ Moore. So I was very high on DJ Moore last week. I'm probably going to go right back to him if McCaffrey is out. If McCaffrey does play, I don't see myself getting a ton of Moore, but if he's out, I like Moore here quite a bit. Moore has been on fire lately, 43 targets on the year. They are feeding this guy, averaging 23.9 DraftKings points, which is more than Davante Adams thus far in 4 games. So I think Moore is in a great spot here against Philly.
Yeah, I would definitely do agree with you on that one. I'm not really scared of Darius Slay. The wide receiver that kind of really stood out to me, price range, the nut price tag was DeAndre Hopkins, man. $7,600, $7,500 on FanDuel. On FanDuel, Mike Williams is actually priced higher than DeAndre Hopkins, and that I thought I had to refresh the page. I thought I was reading something wrong, especially if Trey Lance is going to be a chalky quarterback this week. That's the obvious run back option is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. I love that price tag for him. Last week he was on Ramsey Island and didn't even play that bad. I feel like more weeks than not, especially if you take Tyreek Hill out of the top wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins has the chance to do Tyreek Hill things and break the slate. And I definitely like the point total in that one. That is one of the better game environments of the week. In the mid range, though, or I should say hybrid wide receiver price tag. What are you looking at, Brady?
So right in the hybrid range, there are some guys that do stick out. Touched on Lance and how me and you seem to be pretty high on him this week. Deebo Samuel seems like the guy in San Francisco. I mean, he is number one on the 49ers in terms of targets, 42 targets on the year. Just to put it in perspective, Ayuk has 11 targets and Kittle has 29. So looks like Samuel has more targets than Kittle and Ayuk combined, which if you told me that at the beginning of the year, I probably would have called you crazy, but here we are. And Samuel is in a phenomenal spot here against Arizona. They are 5.5-point underdogs, which means they are projected to be trailing 49.5-point total, which I believe is the third highest on the slate. I think Samuel is a phenomenal option. Another guy that does stick out, you touched on how expensive Mike Williams is. And I completely disagree with that price tag, especially when you see Keenan Allen down there at 6,500. You know, Keenan Allen, you can always count on him for getting a ton of targets, a ton of receptions. Didn't have the best game last week, but still I had like 11 targets last week, averaging 11 targets on the year as well. So Keenan Allen seems like somebody that's always, pretty safe to go to, and he is very cheap as well. And then also Deontay Johnson right in that range as well, 6,500. So I think the matchup might scare some people away. Denver is first in terms of DraftKings points given up to opposing wide receivers, but when Deontay Johnson plays, he is great. No matter how bad Big Ben looks, Johnson's still getting a ton of targets. He's averaging about 12 targets per game this year. So I think Johnson can be he's going to be very low owned, especially when people look at the matchup, look at the game. Pittsburgh's playing bad, but although they're playing bad, they're still throwing Johnson the ball a ton. So I think he's one of the sneaky plays in that range.
I like the way you summarize that mid range, that hybrid range, because that is the same exact players I was looking at. The only one that you didn't name off was CeeDee Lamb. He actually had a bad week last week. I think this is a good bounce back spot. Yep. I think Bradbury is the cornerback's name for the Giants. I feel like he's going to be all over Cooper, so it kind of sets up for a CeeDee Lamb bounce back day. I feel like the more interesting thing is the cheap wide receivers on this slate. I really like Jacoby Myers, wide receiver for the New England Patriots. His price tag is $5,600, $5,900. He's been used a lot. Found some chemistry with the rookie Mac Jones this year, and I like the point total in that game. I feel like some people were scared off last week, and you told me play Josh Allen and all the Bills, and I bet Zach Moss anytime touchdown. I bet the over on his rush attempts. I bet the over on his rushing yards. And shouts to you, Brady. It all started on this Wednesday show, and you said, play the Bills. That's the spot. And that ended up being the spot. What cheap wide receivers are you looking at on this week's slate?
Yeah, so there's three that I'm looking at as of now. Friday I talk about Jalen Waddle going right back to him this week, going against Tampa Bay. 48 total. The Dolphins are 10-point dogs, which I love. I love the game script here. And Will Fuller is on the IR, which I think that's going to definitely help out Waddle in terms of getting more targets. He's averaging 7.5 targets per week this year. And last week it was very weird. He had like 3 receptions on the first drive, something like that, and then he had 0 receptions like the rest of the game.
No. So I was so pissed. That was my best bet on Jimmy Show last week.
Yeah.
Over 3.5. I was getting ready for the tweet to put out, cash it in the first. So, yeah, it was definitely a weird game, Brady.
Dude, he got 3 in the first drive. I was like, what's going on? Like, I couldn't believe it. But no, it's a great time to go back to Jalen Waddle. He's cheap. I love the matchup. Phenomenal matchup. Phenomenal game script. Will Fuller is not on the team as of now. So, yeah, I like Waddle quite a bit. And then going down a little bit, so Randall Cobb, this is very interesting. So MVS is still going to be out. And Randall Cobb was somebody that at the beginning of the year, I thought, Randall Cobb can make a serious impact here. And then he ends up going out there and putting up a 0 week 1. But no, Randall Cobb showed up. He showed up last game. He had a phenomenal game. And MVS, since he's still going to be out, I think going back to Randall Cobb is not a terrible idea at 4K.
Yeah, no, Brady, I don't blame you at all. I was looking at Randall Cobb this week also as well. I think that game might be a sneaky game to end up stacking without Jair Alexander. One wide receiver I was looking at, with all those wide receiver injuries for the Giants this week, I know there's going to be a lot of chalk on Kenny Galladay this week, but in all honesty, I think this is a make or break week for rookie wide receiver Kadarius Toney, man. I think it's now or never for that kid, and I like his price tag this week. Him and Marquez Callaway, I feel like these are make or break it weeks for him. Marquez is $4,700 and $5,400, and Toney is $5,300. I forget his DraftKings price tag off the top of my head, but I like those two cheap wide receivers. Those are both below 5K. What other cheap wide receivers were you looking at this week?
Yeah, really just the last one. I think Chenault is in play for sure, but Marvin Jones Jr. has a little bit more interest for me. 48.5 point total going against Tennessee, and Chark is going to be out, which that should improve the target shares of both Chenault and Marvin Jones Jr. And, Marvin Jones Jr. is doing pretty good this year, averaging 13.5 DraftKings points. He had an off game last week, but prior to that, he was looking phenomenal. So I like Marvin Jones Jr., 5,700. And I think Chenault also gets a bump up as well, going against Tennessee, who Tennessee's actually given up the most DraftKings points to opposing wide receivers, I believe. So I like Jones Jr. and Chenault. I think they're both pretty cheap.
I definitely do agree with you, Brady. There's definitely some wide receivers that I feel like are going to pop up as the week goes on with the injury news and stuff like that. And I feel like those are the two that started off right there, those two Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers. But before we go over to the tight end position, shouts to Clint in the chat. You said, "What up, boys? Traded Pup for Fuller preseason. My heart hurts." Well, Clint, in a dynasty league, when Marvin Jones first got cut from the Lions, I traded Marvin Jones for Keelan Cole straight up, and I got a 4th-round draft pick that was like Davis Mills. So Davis Mills and Keelan Cole for Marvin Jones, one of the biggest goof trades I ever made of the year. I was out here starting Olamide Zaccheaus as my wide receiver too for the first 3 weeks of the season. Straight zeros, just like the my dynasty record this year. Long season, man. That's what I get for Keyshawn Vaughn in the 2nd round last year. But let's go over to the tight end position. This is going to be a real short position this week. This is a rough position this week. I think I'm just going to play TJ Hawkinson and lock him in at $6,400 on FanDuel and have 100% TJ Hawkinson. Is there any tight end that caught your interest this week?
Yeah, I mean, tight end, it seems like this way pretty much every week. Like, it seems no matter who I play, they all seem to never do good. Like, even when I go up and get Kelsey, he only scored like 20 points. So what I'm going to do, and this worked out for me last week. Last week, I had a lot of Ingram and I had a lot of Disley, and they did bad. They didn't do great. Allowed me to go up and get other positions and pay up for them, and actually worked out really well. So I think I'm just going to punt down at tight end this week. Keep it very simple. I'm going to play my man Ricky Seals-Jones for Washington. So Logan Thomas is out, and Seals-Jones is the next man up. He's $2,500 minimum price. You do not need much. Give me 2 catches, I'll be happy. But he had 4 targets last week going against the Saints here. I think Ricky Seals-Jones is going to be my punt option. If I was to pay up, it probably would be Kittle. I like the Lance Kittle stacks, Lance Kittle, Deebo, all that good stuff. But I think paying down is probably going to be where I'm landing this week, especially because I want to go up and get Henry. I want to get Adams, guys like that. So Ricky Seals-Jones, man.
If we're getting dirty at punting at the tight end position this week, I like me some Anthony Firkser, tight end for the Tennessee Titans. I feel like he kind of fits inside the game stacks. We talked about some guys from that game, and I kind of like Firkser's floor, man. Maybe he catches a touchdown, and we're a couple $1,000s richer on a Sunday after a UFC Saturday. But overall, we're going to save the defenses for Friday. Noli actually brings up a good name, though. Mike Gesicki, tight end for the Miami Dolphins. How do you feel about Mike Gesicki this week? I was actually looking at him, adding into my player pool, and then I didn't want to feel like a homer because he's from New Jersey.
He's actually one of the 3 tight ends that I do have listed in terms of like a first look. 18 targets the last 2 weeks, solid match against Tampa Bay's passing defense. I think they're just going to pass the ball a ton. You do not run on this Tampa Bay team, and I think Gesicki's been involved for sure. So yeah, I like Gesicki. I like Waddle. I think both of those are in play against this Tampa Bay defense, who run defense is great, but the pass defense is not.
Yeah, Brady, I definitely do agree with you on that one. I feel like that's a good little starting point for the week, though. Where can they follow you at? And where can they find all your content at?
Yep, Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram is DFS by the numbers. Just posted my full card breakdown and prediction video for MMA. Got out my core plays video for NFL. So lots going on this week. And it should be another busy week. It's been a lot of busy weeks in a row with NFL and MMA. And we don't get a week off from MMA until like Thanksgiving. So going to be a nice grind the next couple weeks here. But I love it.
I want to know, what are your thoughts on the free public play I put out for MMA today? We are taking Maria Agapova on the money line plus 135. One of the biggest favorites ever in MMA history at plus money.
I saw it. I saw it, and I agree with it, but I don't know if I can get there myself, man. I mean, I remember going like nearly 100% owned on Agapova in DraftKings that night, 0% Dobson. So my heart still hurts a little bit, but I think you're on the right side there.
Man, I told her she owes me a bunch of fucking money. She better win me back some money this weekend.
100%.
Oh, man. She might get harassed on Instagram. But if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, make sure you follow me over on @GettingBills. Have a nice day. Make sure you tune in Friday, same exact time.
Yes, sir.